The Las Vegas Raiders have traded away wide receiver Jakobi Meyers to the Jacksonville Jaguars for a 4th and a 6th-round pick in the 2026 NFL Draft. I want to know from everybody down there, what are your thoughts on that trade? Because bottom line is this: when breaking news happens, I'm going to keep you guys up to date. And no matter what happens around the Raiders, we are going to do our best to make sure that you always get the news that you're looking for. So if you're not already subscribed, if those notifications aren't already turned on, if you're not watching the live show where we have over 2,000 people here in the building, then what the hell are you doing? Give me that one-word reaction to Jakobi Meyers getting traded. My one-word reaction for this deal ended up going down is future. And the future is why the Raiders decided to make this move. Because when you look at the deal, you're able to get a 4th and a 6th-round pick. I know that apparently when you're listening to reports, the Raiders were looking for a 2nd and a 3rd rounder. They were looking for a day 2 pick. They did not get a day 2 pick. I could make the argument, though, if you're the Raiders, you could either A, take 2 players here. You could take a player in the 4th and you could take a player in the 6th. Or, depending on where you're drafting, and I think the Raiders, unfortunately, are probably going to be drafted in the top 10. That means that that's a top 10 4th-round pick. That means that's a top 10 6th-round pick. And I think you'd be able to take those picks and potentially turn that into a 3rd round, a day 2 pick, if you're John Spytek, if you're Pete Carroll. But the other reason why I said future, it's because you're stocking up for the future. And after trading Jakobi Meyers, the Raiders are now projected to have 10 draft picks. You got a 1st, you got a 2nd, you got a 3rd, you got 3 picks in the 4th, 1 pick in the 5th, 2 in the 6th, and a 7th-round pick. And that includes your potential comp picks for Trevon Merrick and Robert Spillane. So, to me, the Raiders are stocking up, and they're trying to build for the future. There's going to be a lot of people out there, and I'd probably say the exact same thing. But, Mitch, we had 11 draft picks this past year, and none of the guys are really playing. Really, it's the only Ashton Genty show. I hear you loud and clear. But I do really think in my heart of hearts, even though I wanted the Raiders to win this season, even though Pete Carroll said the Raiders are going to win this season, I also was saying all offseason that the plan was, let's get good in 2025, let's get better in 2026, and then in 2027 is when the Raiders, I really truly think, believe their Super Bowl window is going to be. When you look at the salary cap that we have, top 3 in salary cap next offseason and in the offseason after that in 2027. When you look at the Max Crosby contract, how that was set up, that's set up to be a team trying to win in 2026 and 2027. We walk into every single year with high hopes. Why? Because we're Raiders fans. I'll say it. You call me crazy, you call me a Raiders fan. But if you're not a hopeful Raiders fan, I don't know how the hell you're a Raiders fan. So, yeah, I walk into every offseason hoping that we can be a contender, we can be a good football team. But unfortunately, we're just not there yet. We lack depth on offense, and we lack depth, and I mean a lot of depth, on the defensive side of the football. The easiest way to be able to rebuild all the holes that we have is through the draft and through free agency with all the money that we have. So the Raiders, even though we're struggling this year, and even though it's a bad first year with this regime, when you look at salary cap, you look at draft picks, there should be reason why you have some hope. So the trade ended up going down about 45 minutes ago, and I was breaking it all down for you guys here live on the show. I want to know from you, who won the Jakobi Meyers trade? If you think the Jacksonville Jaguars did, type Jaguars down below. If you think the Las Vegas Raiders ended up winning the trade, I want you to spam Raiders down below. You're about to get hit with a YouTube ad break. While that ad is playing, I want you to scroll on down, and I want you to give me your answer, because after this YouTube ad break, I'm going to give you my answer on who won the Jakobi Meyers trade. I'm going to sit up here and go, I do think that both sides won this deal. I think if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, you're looking at this trade and you're going, I'm able to potentially replace Brian Thomas Jr., who, from what it sounds like, wasn't totally getting along in Jacksonville. You're going to be without Travis Hunter. He had that injury, and they lack talent at wide receiver. I just saw him play against the Raiders. They did lack talent at that position. So you go out, you get a guy in Jakobi Meyers. Also, though, for Jakobi, he's got a great relationship with Edgar Bennett. Remember that name? Raiders' old wide receiver coach, Edgar Bennett, for, God, I don't even know how many years he was with this organization, is now in Jacksonville with Liam Cohen. So that makes sense why Jakobi decided to go there. From the Raiders' standpoint, you were able to get a 4th and a 6th round pick. That's either two players that might be able to help you in the future, or you could package those picks and you end up getting a day 2 pick. It makes sense for a 2-6 football team to plan for the future, and it makes sense for a 5-3 Jags team that needs wide receiver help to go out and make the deal that they did. But let's also face the facts here. Jakobi wasn't having the year that we were hoping that he was going to have. And if you would have told me that 47 catches, 503 yards, I get it. Geno hasn't been good. Chip Kelly stinks. And the chemistry between Jakobi and Geno wasn't nearly as good as what everybody here was hoping for. And when you really sit back and you look at just some of the numbers that Jakobi Meyers has put up, the 33 catches, the 352 yards. I was looking at those numbers, and I was like, I don't think that those are right. But you look at these Jakobi Meyers numbers, and, you look at his past few games, 23 receiving yards against Jacksonville, 39 receiving yards against Tennessee, 32 against Indianapolis, 30 against Chicago. That's 4 straight games, basically 5 straight weeks with him under 40 receiving yards. Now, I know he missed the game up against the Kansas City Chiefs, but when I watched a lot of Geno tape early on, I would say the number one player that Geno Smith, when he was throwing interceptions, was targeting was Jakobi Meyers. And I'm not saying that's Jakobi's fault, but I am saying if you're the number one receiver and if the chemistry isn't 100% there, then maybe it's time to move on. But for the Raiders, you're moving on from a player that was not going to come back. And I get the Raiders would have got a 4th-round comp pick if he would have hit the open market, and they had a decision to make. The decision was, I think getting a 4th and a 6th-round pick in next year's draft in 2026 is more valuable than keeping Jakobi throughout this entire year and getting a 4th-round comp pick in 2027. I agree with that statement from a long-term view. Now, we'll talk about here some of the winners and losers on the Raiders after this deal ends up going down. But I think another really important thing that we got to look at with this trade is how exactly does it impact the Raiders and how exactly does it impact the Jacksonville Jaguars? So the new team that acquires Jakobi, they're going to take on $7 million. And obviously, he's a free agent in the year 2026. I will say this $7 million figure might be a little bit less now because that tweet was sent out on October 16th. If I had to guess, Jacksonville's probably going to be somewhere around like $5 million. That's just off the top of my head. But for the Raiders, your dead cap hit is $7.8 million for this season, and your dead cap hit for next year is $4.3 million. And that's just because the Raiders have already restructured Jakobi Meyers' contract multiple times since he's been a member of the Las Vegas Raiders. So again, here's the trade that ended up going down in Jacksonville. They literally just announced it for them. As long as Jakobi passes his physical, I don't see why he wouldn't pass his physical. This deal will officially, and I mean officially, be a done deal. So coming up next here on the show, let's talk about who this helps on the Raiders and who it hurts the most on the Silver and Black. Because anytime a trade happens, there are winners and there are losers. It's just the way that it goes. Because as soon as Jakobi leaves, there's going to be players on this team that are going to get more opportunities. And then there's players on this team that losing Jakobi only hurts them. And that's just the cold, hard fact. Coming up here, I'm going to tell you the winners, losers from that Jakobi Meyers trade. Before I get into that, though, this Raiders Report episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. The hard-hitting football action is even better with Prize Picks. The weather might be changing, but the feeling of being right never gets old. So keep the season rolling on Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Prize Picks is simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stats. If you get your picks right, you can cash in. Prize Picks is the best way to win cash all football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports takes into cash all season long on Prize Picks. My Thursday night football lineup for the Silver and Black is this. This is a 5-pick to pay 55. I'm doing a 3-pick power play. I need all 3 of these to happen for me to turn my $5 into $55. If you're like Mitch, why would I do Prize Picks? If you're a Raiders fan and you plan on watching the game and you need something to root for just in case it gets ugly, here you go. Like that's the best selling point that I could say to anybody of why you should get Prize Picks. If you plan on watching a game and you need something to root for, no matter what, I'm going to be rooting for Genty. No matter what, I'm going to be rooting for Bowers. I'm not going to say I'm rooting for Bo Nix pass completions more. I just think that it's ultimately going to end up happening because I feel like teams pick apart our team in the middle, and that's really where Bo Nix and that offense dominates. So download the PrizePicks app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. So let's now go to the trade winners and losers after this Jakobi Meyers deal. And to me, there's a few more winners that you could look at compared to the loser side of the football. But ultimately, this is a good trade for where the Raiders are at right now, which would have been really interesting is if this trade would have happened after beating Jacksonville. Because if we would have been 3-5, I don't know if this trade would have happened, if I'm being 100% honest with you. I really, really, truly do not know. Now, maybe Jacksonville would have still gone out there and they would have tried to do it, but only time, I guess we'll never know. Here is where the Raiders' wide receiver depth chart is currently sitting after that trade. And again, I think it's one of the weaker wide receiver rooms in the National Football League. Let's just be honest with ourselves. It's definitely not one of the better ones. So the way that these Jakobi trade winners are going to go is I have them ranked from littlest winner to the biggest winner, and I got 6 guys here. Coming in here at number 6, I'm going to say Thornton Jr. Dante was a healthy and active. Now what I'm guessing is he's going to be able to be active on Sundays and on game days, and this also gives him the opportunity to just get some extra reps, get some of those extra opportunities. Because Jakobi is a possession receiver, I don't think that the crossover is all too big. But if I'm the Raiders and if I am moving on from Jakobi, it means I'm trying to run the football a little bit more to help our running game get going. Use Dante Thornton a little bit more as a decoy. Just put him down the field. Even if you're not going to throw it to him, send him down the field. If he does that 4 or 5 times a game, that might be able to open up a big running lane for Ashton Genty, or set up some sort of screen on that side. Let's go to number 5 here. I'm going to go with Alex Bachman. Bachman has been a reliable punt returner for the Raiders. I think he's done some good stuff for us in that special teams regard. Is definitely better than Tre Tucker, at least early on. But the other reason why this is going to help Bachman, and I think sneakily could be a player that gets a little bit more work than what people are anticipating, is because of his sure-handedness, because he is a good special teams player. But also, he does a lot of his work out of the slot. Dante Thornton Jr., not a slot receiver. Tyler Lockett at this point of his career, not a slot receiver. I think really you're looking at Alex Bachman and Jack Bech as the 2 slot guys to take over for Jakobi Meyers. Though, let's go to number 4 here. I'm going to go with Tyler Lockett. He saw only 1 target in that loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and it was on the 2-point conversion that was definitely wide open. And when you look at that play, you're like, God, Tyler's open. Bowers is open. Jakobi's open. I don't even know how the hell I ended up getting tipped. But this obviously helps out Lockett because, going into the year, it was really Jakobi was the only experienced receiver that we realistically have. Lockett is somebody that is close, very, very close. I know, sorry, I just saw some NFL news, so I paused for a second. Nothing regarding the Raiders, I'll tell you after this cut. But Tyler Lockett is a veteran. So the veteran with Geno, I think because having that veteran presence, Geno's not going to trust a bunch of these young players over and over and over again. I do think Lockett's going to get more opportunities. Let's go to number 3 here, Michael Mayer. Because Jakobi has been traded, in my personal opinion, you're not going to see Brock being featured on this list because Brock is Brock Bowers, and if any trade impacts Brock, then we're just not a good team anyway because Brock should always be a big part of the plan. But if we're talking about where certain targets could go, if let's say if Jakobi's averaging 6 targets a game, I think 2 of those targets need to go with Michael Mayer, and I want to see more of that 2 tight end set. Because Bowers is healthy again, I would be totally okay if the Raiders wanted to roll out an offense that featured Bowers as your number 1 wide receiver. Put Michael Mayer in there at tight end, and then you can kind of keep on running the same offense that you were doing with Tyler Lockett, with Tre Tucker, with number 2 guy here on this show. It's going to be Jack Bech. And I think some people probably expected that Bech was going to be number 1 on this show in terms of the biggest winner after the Jakobi trade. He's number 2 because he still hasn't been getting as much work as what I was hoping for. And yes, he was drafted in the 2nd round. You have to use him more now, though. If you're the Raiders, you have to see what you have more from Jack Bech, who, even though he hasn't been given many opportunities, when he's been given opportunities, I actually think he's looked pretty damn good. But to me, the biggest winner from the Jakobi Meyers trade, it's got to be Tre Tucker. He's in the third year of his career, having a little bit of his own breakout year, and he wasn't used nearly as much this past week against Jacksonville. I want to say 3 catches, maybe 4 targets in general. But for a guy like Tre, who's been looking for his opportunity to be able to show the Raiders, to be able to show the NFL, hell, I think be able to show everyone that I can be a number 1 wide receiver, at least the number 2. You're going to get that opportunity. Tre Tucker is going to get more opportunities now, and if he's able to capitalize, he might be able to find himself getting a brand new contract extension. I'm not saying it's going to be a lot of money, but to me, Tre Tucker's getting a bigger responsibility. Michael Mayer's getting a bigger responsibility. And when I talk about the top target getters, Brock Bowers is going to be number 1. And then I think you could do some sort of combination between Ashton Jeanty, Tre Tucker, Michael Mayer. Those are going to be your top 4 target getters from Geno Smith in my book. But I want to know from the nation and the 2,000 people that are watching this program right now, who is your winner from the Jakobi Meyers trade? And when you think about this question, think about the question in regards to who do you think benefits the most from the Raiders trading away Jakobi Meyers? My answer is Tre Tucker. I think Tre Tucker is going to benefit the most. I think Jack Bech could be thrown into that mix as well. That is where I am going to be standing. Though I've seen a lot of y'all spamming Jacksonville. I mean, Jacksonville is also going to be a winner in this trade. Luckily, though, I do think the Raiders got they got good value for Jakobi in the trade. So Raiders won the trade. Jacksonville won the trade. I want to know on the Raiders team, though, who you think is the biggest winner from this. Now, though, we talked about the winners. Now let's go look at the losers from this trade. Coming in here at number 4, I think you got to put Pete Carroll on this list. And I say that only because Jakobi was such a well-loved, well-respected player on, off the field, in that locker room. And when Jakobi asked to be dealt, you went out, you tried to sign Amari Cooper. Obviously, Cooper retired. That rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. You know, you go out, you get yourself a Tyler Lockett. I just think for an organization that predicates itself on commitment to excellence and going out there and competing and not rewarding a player who did, I think, everything right on and off the field, especially at a position filled with a bunch of divas at the wide receiver position, the Pete Carroll regime has been a disaster so far. It has been. It's the truth. It's been a disaster. And losing a guy like Jakobi Meyers hurts right now. But I'm hoping it helps us in the future. Let's go to number 3 here, Raider Nation. And quite frankly, I probably could have put Raider Nation at number 1. And some of you are probably like, Mitch, we are the biggest losers in this trade. Losing Jakobi sucks because it doesn't make us a better football team right now. And it's painful to just see this team get rid of its best players. I think kind of almost every single year that I do this show, you know, it's like, well, that guy's going to go, and he's probably going to be really good on another team, right? And Jakobi's probably going to be a really dominant player on the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think, quite frankly, he's the perfect fit for the type of offense that they run and for the type of, runs that they like to do. Coming in here, though, at number 2, I'm going to say Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly has been, I'd say, the biggest issue that this team has had all season long, the highest paid offensive coordinator in the NFL, and he's been completely lost. Now, he finally was able to get it going a little bit against the Jags, and that offense looked a lot better. The problem is, though, you're losing now Jakobi, and I'm not saying he was really using Jakobi all that much, but let's face the facts. Losing Jakobi Meyers makes this offense worse. And anytime you say it makes the offense worse, it makes Chip Kelly a loser. But also, I think the biggest loser in the Jakobi trade, I'm going to go with Geno Smith. And Geno just threw 4 touchdowns and interception, had a quarterback rating of 117 against Jacksonville, and finally looked like he might be figuring out even a little bit. I know the 2-point conversion play sucked. I know the interception to start the second half is all the reasons why Geno is so frustrating. But Geno's playing for his career. Like, he's playing for his own legacy in a sense, and it's been bad with the Raiders. I mean, hell, you're talking about a dude that when he ran out onto the field on his own home stadium, he got booed. And it wasn't like a boo, boo, Geno, boo, Geno. It was boo, Boo! You're getting boos like that. You need to be able to figure it out. And losing a guy like Jakobi isn't going to help out Geno Smith. But if you're the Raiders, you made the decision, and I don't want to hear excuses from Geno. I don't want to hear excuses from Chip Kelly. I don't want to hear excuses from Pete Carroll. Y'all made the decision to trade away Jakobi Meyers. And if you're going to use the excuse that Geno Smith deserves to be this team's starting quarterback going into next season, if he doesn't show any improvement because you traded away his number one guy, then I'm going to be really disappointed. Geno Smith needs to prove to me, to you, to Pete Carroll, to this regime, that if he wants to be the starting quarterback next season, he's got to play much, much better. And I hope that the Jakobi Meyers trade is not an excuse that this team uses. But at the same time, would anybody be surprised if they used it as an excuse? Now, if you've made it this far in the video, again, huge shout out to each and every one of y'all. When Raiders news happens, I got you covered here. Subscribe to the Raiders Report. It's 100% free. If you don't like watching the show after 1 week, unsubscribe. You got nothing to lose. Appreciate you tuning in. Jakobi, I'll say this. I will wish Jakobi Meyers nothing but the best in Jacksonville. But I'll also say to the Las Vegas Raiders, you better figure out a way to make sure that those draft picks that you're getting are actually used in the proper way.